Coming in number 5, we've got the Grand Grimoire. Well, with a name like that, you'd better hope it's imbued with some terrible power, otherwise, what's the point? We discussed a grimoire in our last video that was more directed towards witches and other followers of Wicca. If you're part of that group, it's safe to read, otherwise you'd better watch out. This one is just straight up evil according to some. And when a book is this jam-packed with horrid, abominable information, people tend to take notice. It's been referred to as the Gospel of Satan, which is a fun genre to imagine. However, I would hazard a guess that most modern Satanists want nothing to do with it, as they tend to be more peace-loving and accepting. Back in the 16th century, a man claimed to be possessed by the devil. Whether this was Satan proper or one of many hideous demons inhabiting the fires of hell, I guess we may never know. Lots of demons who inhabit the bodies of the living like to pretend they're something that they're not, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was inspired by a different being than Satan himself. However, that doesn't make it any less scary. Some say that this is the deadliest book going, with lots of stories to back it up. Those who read it are privy to some incredibly dark secrets, from doom bringing incantations to demon summoning guides. You don't just get these lessons for free though. All this eldritch knowledge comes at a price. By simply opening the book and reading from its pages, you're essentially offering up your soul to whatever dark forces inhabit it. And the longer you stick around reading away, the more likely it is that something will take what is most precious to you. Usually reading plenty is good for you, but in this case you're playing with fire. The Grand Grimoire is rumored to be so dangerous that people have locked it away in the depths of the Vatican, protected by all sorts of holy implements. Others say that the real grimoire is still out there somewhere, circulating between occultists and evil spirits. This legend has staying power, and many have taken the idea of such a book and added it to other stories, from movies to video games to urban legends. Who knows, maybe the real Grand Grimoire is sitting in some unassuming thrift shop, waiting to be picked up by the right person. Coming in number 4, we've got Homino's Hell. Veering off in a very different direction, we're going to take a look at a book that doesn't necessarily have hundreds of years of curses and evil energy imbued within it. Compared to a lot of these other books, it's a relatively new haunted tale, one hailing from Japan. It doesn't even need to physically be in the possession of the person reading it. All it takes to be cursed by this poem is to read it aloud. That's dangerous. Stories of this damned poem started showing up after the author, Saijo Yaso, published a collection of his work in 1919, so I guess it is over 100 years old now. Huh. After losing family members in World War I, he took the grief and pain he was experiencing and put it into words. It's not a very long poem, so you could definitely read it in one sitting. I'm not going to read it aloud today for obvious reasons, but we can do our best to summarize the tale and delve into the haunted story. A lot of the details are left up to interpretation, but the general idea here is that it tells the tragic tale of an girl who is left to die by her family. Not a pretty picture. Years later, as rumors circulated, a director decided to make a film based on the poem. After completing his project, he suddenly died with no explanation, causing people to worry even more. This helped the poem make its way into circulation as an urban legend. The internet helped a great deal, and a recounting of the tale in a more modern book did wonders as well. So nobody can be exactly sure where the cursed nature of the poem originated, whether it was the internal turmoil of Saijo Yaso, the unfortunate end of the director, or the general negative energy associated with it in the eye of the public. Regardless, this is one piece of writing that you do not want to be reciting. If you're extra brave though, give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. I will not be taking that risk today.
In our third spot today, we have the Voynich Manuscript. This manuscript was discovered in an old chest in Rome in 1912, and is believed to have been written sometime in the early 15th century. Now, there is a lot of mystery surrounding this book. For starters, we really don't know who wrote it. Apparently, it was purchased by the Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who believed it had been written by Roger Bacon. But Bacon lived in the 12th century, and the paper carbon dated to the 15th. So that doesn't add up. What the heck is going on? Now, the first known owner of the book was an alchemist named George Barish. One day he found the book in his library and he was like, okay, how the heck did it get there? I don't know this book. After him, the book was owned by a number of emperors and officials. Again, no one has ever been able to decipher this 240-page book. Even the best cryptographers and linguists in the world haven't been able to decipher it. Not only that, but the book contains images of plants that have been long extinct. And it also has images of intricate astrological signs. As a result, this book has been deemed the world's most mysterious book. And the Everest of historical code breaking. Now, there are a number of theories associated with this book. One is that it was created by aliens, hence why we don't understand the language. It's some alien language. The second theory is that it was created by a demon or the devil himself. In fact, people think that by deciphering this book, it will unleash a curse and kill whoever reads it. This is also why the book has become one of the most feared books of all time. In fact, a number of people who have tried to translate this book have gone on to have years and years of bad luck. Coming in at number 2, we have the Necronomicon. I know what you're thinking. Lindsay, this is a fictional book. Why is this on this list? Well, a number of people believe this book to be real. Obviously, this is a horror channel, so you probably all know about this book, but here's a little refresher. The Necronomicon, also called The Book of the Dead, is a fictional book created by H.P. Lovecraft. It's featured in the Evil Dead movies, and reading it can release literal hell. So it is an ancient grimoire bound in human skin with its images and text inked in human blood. Yum. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Lovecraft insisted it was a made-up book, but true fans of the occult think otherwise. The book, in fact, exists, but is hidden so that it will never cause any harm. Now, Lovecraft says the idea of the book came to him in a dream, so many think that the spirits of this book chose Lovecraft to reveal it, meaning the book is really out there somewhere. Now, real-life publishers decided to produce physical copies of this book, but obviously those books don't harness real evil powers. But who knows? Maybe one day we will unearth the real Necronomicon. Let's hope not. Seriously, let's keep this as a fictional book. I've seen Evil Dead. I'm not about it, okay? And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Untitled Grimoires. Back in 2013, 2 mysterious books appeared online by a bookseller. The books were quite weird. They were handwritten in red ink with weird symbols all throughout it. Turns out that these books were real-life witch spell books. But here's the thing. Once a witch dies, their spell books are supposed to be burned. These 2 books were not burned after the witch's death, meaning that they are now highly cursed. In fact, the seller warned how cursed they were. Like, who would willingly buy a cursed book? Not me. Anyways, the book itself comes with a warning written on its first page. It says, and I quote, "To those not of this craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you surely will suffer at the hand of the craft." So if you're not a witch and you bought this book, you're basically screwed, RIP. The books were listed online for over $13,000. That's a lot of money to pay for a curse. But we don't know for sure if anyone actually bought them. So hey, go ahead and check them out if you got money to spend and if you aren't afraid of a little curse. Now, apparently this book is filled with a lot of dark materials, like how to perform exorcisms and how to summon demons. Whereas the other book contains stuff on alchemy, ceremonial perfumes, cures, etc. Hey, maybe there's a spell in there that will teach you how to break the book's curse. Who knows? If you want it, go buy it.
Number 5 on this list is the Sworn Book of Honorius. This is an ancient medieval grimoire that was very influential and was apparently written by Honorius of Thebes. I say that word apparently because it's currently unknown whether Honorius of Thebes was actually a real person or a complete myth. If he was real, then he's said to have a deep connection with religion, magic, and the devil. This book, the Sworn Book of Honorius, is said to be the oldest medieval grimoire to date, with some people estimating that it was written back in the 1300s. Even though Honorius of Thebes was said to have written this book, it's said to be a collection of many magicians who attempted to condense the knowledge that they had into 93 chapters. The book covers a wide array of magical topics. This includes having the ability to travel to purgatory, or to potentially save someone from purgatory, or even send them there in the first place. It shows people the rituals necessary to summon a demon and bring them into our real physical world. Then once that demon is there, the book goes on to describe how we can command a demon to do our bidding. It shows people how to send someone to hell or to heaven if that person chooses. It even goes in depth about treasure hunting and the proper methods to finding treasure. This book was supposed to act as a one-stop shop on how to be a full magician. A big warning though, and why you need to pray before reading, is actually written in the book. Let him who would work in a magical art beware that he not be in deadly sin, for if he be, he shall be mad ever after. For the soul by its nature desires to see God in whom it delights, but the impediment of sin frustrates its desire and it cannot see God. He who would work in magical art must be willing in his work and utterly cleansed from all filthiness, for the more he suffers, the more he shall obtain. Basically, if you intend to use this book, then you can expect your soul to go through some serious suffering. Number 4 on this list is the Dragon Rouge. The Dragon Rouge is an updated version of one of the most haunted texts in history, the Grand Grimoire. Keegan actually covered the Grand Grimoire in one of his previous parts of this series, so I highly recommend you go check out one of those videos if you haven't already. But the Cole's notes are that the Grand Grimoire was a text that described how to make a deal with the devil. It showed the reader how to summon Lucifer, and then how to make a pact with him once he is summoned. The Dragon Rouge is a version of this Grand Grimoire that goes further into detail on several demons and how one should summon them. What's interesting about this text is that it inspired the name for a cult group in the 90s called the Dragon Rouge. This cult was founded by Thomas Carlson, a Swedish man, in 1989. Thomas claimed that he had visions growing up as a child and believed to be connected to spirits and God somehow. This cult is based in the left-hand path of magic, which for those who don't know, is considered to be the dark magic and associated with the workings of the devil. Apparently, the Dragon Rouge text is one that is worshipped and used quite often during the proceedings of this cult. If you wanted to, you could actually visit the Dragon Rouge's website and volunteer to join their cult, but based on the writings of the book that they worship, I personally wouldn't recommend it.
Coming in at number 3, we have Tomino's Hell. Now, this isn't so much a book as it is a poem, but it is so cursed that it deserves a spot on this list, okay? So, Tomino's Hell is the name of a poem written by Seijo Yaso. Legend goes that whoever reads the poem out loud will suffer from misfortune or even death. Consequences range from feeling sick to injuring yourself, and even death. So no one really knows what this poem is about. Some interpret that the poem is about a young boy who descends into the 8 levels of hell after killing his parents. Whereas others believe it's about a man going to war and then dying, never being able to see his family again. Either way, it's said that you should never, and I mean never, read this poem out loud. The curse is so strong that some people who have read this poem in their head have even felt ill while doing so. Now, I refuse to even look at the poem, let alone recite it. According to this legend, one person read the poem and ended up vomiting glass. Another person had their loved ones die a tragic death. In fact, one radio show host tried to read it out loud on air, and halfway through he started to feel ill and disturbed and wasn't able to finish it. He continued to feel ill, and a few days later he got into an accident that resulted in him having to get 7 stitches. So don't even think about reading it. And I mean, I say that, but I know you guys are Googling it as I speak. Coming in at number 2, we have Babadook. Also, do you guys say Babadook or Babadook? Because let me know which way is the right way. Politely, let me know. Anyways, the 2014 movie Babadook is pretty freaking creepy, not gonna lie. And of course, there's that famous scene in the movie with that creepy ass pop-up book. Well, fans loved it so much they wanted a copy of this book in real life. So the creators listened to the people and created limited copies of the Babadook book. In 2015, 6,200 pop-up books were created. Later, they did do a second release, but after that, they said they were no longer making any more copies of the book. People were then selling them on eBay for like $500. Anyways, a couple of people claimed that the book they received was cursed or haunted. Being in the same room as the book made them feel uneasy. They literally became super dizzy and sick. One person was even reading the book when she passed out. She woke up the next day on the couch with no recollection of what happened the night before. So be careful. These books might be cursed. And in our number 1 spot today, we have The Endless Book. This is the name I have given to a cursed book that was purchased off of eBay. On the selling site, it was listed as a vintage beautiful notebook. It had this beautiful intricate design on the front with gold details and real gems in it. The pages were filled with someone else's drawings, doodles, and writing. But it came with a warning. It was cursed. The seller said that the book once belonged to her friend and it was her diary. But her friend ended up taking her life, and now apparently her soul is attached to her diary, and she haunts whoever owns the book. Now, the book was purchased by a woman who is obsessed with collecting vintage items. She thought the whole backstory was just a load of BS, a ploy to get the book to sell. That was until weird things started to happen to her. Drawings in the book would change, disappear, or switch pages. Writings would also appear and disappear. It's given me Tom Riddle's diary vibes from Harry Potter, not gonna lie. The freakiest part was the book was growing. Each day a page was getting added to the book, some blank, some with new drawings or new texts. Now, the woman was smart and ended up getting rid of the book. That was after the book literally gave her a warning. She woke up one day to the book open. The page it was on had "The End" written across the page in big red bold letters. It was written in blood. To this day, we don't know what happened to this cursed diary. But I think we all learned a valuable lesson, right? Don't go buying haunted/cursed items off of eBay.
Coming in number 5, we've got Spindrift. Before we get into all of the grimoires and Necronomicons and Devil Bibles, we gotta pay our respects to a good old-fashioned spooky novel? Autobiography? A little mix of the two. Curling up with a creepy pile of pages on a chilly fall day, maybe with a cup of your favorite hot beverage by your side, is unmatched. If you haven't tried it yet, I beg you to forego streaming services for one day and really soak in that paperback atmosphere. Right, so once you've experienced that unique joy, you can die a happy death, which just might happen if you stumble across a copy of Spindrift. Upon first glance, this book looks like any other pulpy horror book from the 70s. However, there's definitely a lot more than meets the eye. It reads partially like a novel, sort of like an autobiography, and somewhat like an account of a haunting. The tale is that of an author, Jan Bryant Bartell, and her experiences while living with her husband in the supposedly haunted death house of Greenwich Village. Before the couple moved in, the house already had quite the reputation. Mark Twain had resided there, and even as a skeptic, he was often unsettled by the unexplainable happenings. Families moved in and out, oftentimes falling victim to tragic fates. This had a great impact on Bartell in particular, who seemed to unlock some latent psychic potential at the house. During her time here, all sorts of horrid events transpired. Her pet dog died, news of others in her life perishing came to her, and she noticed all sorts of presences throughout the house. This caused a great deal of trepidation and terror, and eventually drove the couple off the property. After witnessing 9 deaths during her stay, Bartell wanted to be as far away as possible. Following this move, she decided to commit her story to page and wrote Spindrift. She spared no detail in this extremely personal account of the haunting, and eventually did finish the initial manuscript. Unfortunately, she became the 10th victim to the house. After completing the manuscript, Bartell passed away, supposedly followed by the curse. People who read this book claim to feel a very spooky presence while flipping through the pages. There haven't been any accounts of readers falling victim yet, but I'd still be careful while reading. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Untitled Grimoires. Here we go, some real spooky stuff. When you hear the term grimoire, you know you're in for some haunted volumes, that's for sure. Especially if they remain untitled, adding to the mystery and allure. How positively chilling. These 2 tomes became objects of intrigue back in 2013 when they were sold through an online auction. They fetched quite a hefty price, coming in at around $14,000. For any other spiral-bound notebooks, that asking price would be outrageous, but the history surrounding these grimoires makes them worth every penny. Apparently they were penned by none other than Persephone Adrastea Irene, a Wiccan high priestess with a coven full of devoted followers. She was quite the spellcaster and filled the books with all sorts of magical knowledge. Over 200 pages of enchantments, incantations, summons, and spells can be found by the owner of these books. Summoning rituals for demons and spirits are a major factor here too. However, the books came with a grave warning. Any non-witches should avoid them at all costs, as Persephone left a little message behind for them. It reads, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution. You will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." The actual threat is quite vague, but with all of the possible spells and curses and hexes listed in the book, one can assume that their punishment would have something to do with that. So if you're not praying to the goddesses of Wicca before cracking open one of these, maybe consider what you're doing. Life is hard enough without additional magical mayhem invading. You can choose not to read the Untitled Grimoires.
Coming in our third spot, we have the Book of Sacred Magic. Back in the 15th century, a mage named Abra Melin decided to gift his son with a book filled with mythical curses. I doubt it was on his son's wish list, but hey, it's the thought that counts, right? Anyways, in the 1900s, the book was translated to English, and that's when people realized it was probably cursed. Why? Well, throughout the book, it talked about rituals on how to control your demons. Abra believed that every person had their own demon, not just a metaphorical one, but a literal one. This book taught you on how to control your demon. It also talked about how to perform other supernatural acts. In the end, it was believed that whoever owns a copy will be haunted by spirits, and bad luck will befall on them. In fact, a number of people have reported bad luck and hauntings after reading this book. So it seriously isn't worth it. Like, I'm not getting cursed. No, thank you. Coming in at number 2, we have the Book of Soiga, otherwise known as the Book That Kills. So I suggest you don't put it on your reading list. Basically, this book was created in the 16th century and is a Latin essay all about demonology. To this day, we still don't know who wrote it. But what we do know is that John Dee, who worked as an advisor for Elizabeth I, got the book in 1580. He spent the rest of his life trying to decipher the whole thing. He quickly realized that this book was no good. It talked about how to conjure demons and had a list of spells and stuff like that. Rumor has it that one section of the book he could not decipher at all. It was a page with tables filled with random Latin letters. But he was determined to decipher it. So him and his pal, who was an occultist and medium, apparently summoned the archangel Uriel. The angel apparently spoke through his friend and said that this book was made when Adam entered paradise. And also, apparently only Archangel Michael is the only one who can decipher the full book. The angel also warned them that the book was cursed, and anyone who deciphers the meaning of the coded tables would die 2.5 years later. Well, in the end, this book drove John to madness, and he died. After his death, the book was lost for the longest time, until 1994. That's when not one, but 2 copies were found. Crazy. But let me know in the comments below, if you had the opportunity, would you risk your life deciphering this book? I'm a little curious to see what it's about, but also I don't want to die, so maybe not. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Devil's Bible. The Devil's Bible, otherwise known as the Codex Gigas, is this massive 310-page book said to harness evil and negative energy. It was discovered in 1648 when a Swedish army looted the city of Prague. During this time, they discovered this book, which is considered the largest medieval book in the world. Like I said, it was composed of 310 pages, but it is also 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, 8.7 inches thick, and weighs 165 pounds. In fact, the book did contain 320 pages at one point, but the last 10 pages were cut out and removed. More on this later, stay tuned. So now, there's this really creepy legend surrounding this book. Legend goes that the book was written by a monk, but this monk broke his spiritual vows, and he was sentenced to be sealed behind a brick wall and left to die. The night before his death, he realized he would not be able to finish his book, so he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete it for him. In return, he offered him his soul. So legend goes that this book was finished by the devil himself. Now, remember those pages that I said were removed? Well, apparently they were removed for a very important reason. Some people believe that those pages told people how to summon the devil. And obviously, if those pages fell into the wrong hands, it would be bad. To make this book even creepier, some pages are filled with drawings of the devil and other demonic entities. One page contains a 19-inch frightening drawing of Satan. And apparently, the book also contains a bunch of dark rituals and tests, like how to perform exorcisms. You know, in case you summon the devil or a demon, then you just want to take it all back again. Starting off this countdown, we have The Orphan's Story. The Orphan's Story is an adventure book about a Spanish teen who heads to the Spanish Empire in search for fortune. Doesn't sound like a scary story at all, right? Well, wrong. This book is apparently very cursed. So it was written in the early 1600s by a monk who broke his sacred vow. His name was Martin de Leon Cardenas. But here's the thing. The book didn't get published until 2018. Why? because anyone who worked on the book or helped with its publication died under mysterious circumstances. Hence why people started to say that this book was cursed. For example, one editor died in a horrific accident. The other couple of editors died of strange illnesses. Now, you're probably wondering the same thing that I was. How come this seemingly innocent book got cursed? Well, that still remains a mystery. Some believe it was cursed after the author broke his vow. It was cursed as a punishment for his betrayal. Whereas others believe the book is cursed by the devil himself. But it seems as if the curse has been lifted now, so no need to worry. Maybe that's because the author is long gone. Once he died, the curse was lifted. Anyways, in 1965, a woman named Belinda Palacios discovered this book hidden in the archives of the Hispanic Society of America. Everyone warned her about the curse, but she didn't listen. She began working on this book for 2 years. Eventually, in 2018, it finally got published. And it's believed that the curse, again, like I said, is lifted. Either way, I'm not going to tempt my fate by reading it. But let me know in the comments below, are you brave enough to read this cursed book? In our 4th spot today, we have The Great Omar. This book has quite the dark past. So in 1909, a man named Sansgorsky decided to create a much fancier version of the book, The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Anyways, he bejeweled it and made the cover look beautiful. It took him 2,500 hours to create. In the end, it had 1,500 precious stones / semi-precious stones, 4,900 leather inlays, and 600 sheets of 22 karat gold leaf. It's honestly a very beautiful book. But the thing is, no one wanted to buy this super expensive book when they could literally get the same book without all that for much cheaper. So all that time and effort was for nothing. No one wanted to buy it. Now, eventually it was put up for auction, but only sold for £450. Ugh. Now, the book was shipped, but it never got to its buyer. Why? Well, the ship it was being transported on was the Titanic, and the book went down with the ship. But wait, get this. Only a few weeks later, the creator of this book mysteriously drowns. Ain't that a freaky coincidence? But that's not all. A second version of this book was created and they called it The Great Omar II. It was then placed in a bank vault. But the bank was hit by a bomb during the London Blitz of World War II, and this copy was destroyed as well. Then a third copy was created and donated to the British Library, where apparently it is still to this day. But due to its dark past, many believe that this book is cursed and that bad things will happen to whoever owns it. I'd say, like, dang, that was bad luck from the get-go. Like, as soon as he created it, it was just bad luck everywhere.
In at number 3, we have The Great Omar. Some call The Great Omar the most cursed book of all time. Unlike other books in this list that might unleash a curse on the person or people who open it, the curse is often contained. This book, however, has been linked to many great tragedies throughout history. People were captured by the beauty of this book. The beauty of the binding hid the curse from the world and enchanted buyers. The book was embellished with over 1,000 jewels, with 5,000 leathers on lays and 100 square feet of gold leaf. It took the team of craftsmen over 2.5 years to make. Only one was ever made due to the grandeur of the book. When the book was finally completed, it was sold at auction for £1,000 and shipped to New York for display. The book went down on the Titanic and was destroyed. Some say it was due to the book being on board that the ship went down when further misfortunes followed anyone involved. The creator of the book drowned while trying to rescue a woman a few weeks later. His partner decided to recreate the book. Again, this was a long and painful task, costing him a lot of time. Once the second book was created, it was placed in a vault in London. He wanted it to be reserved so that it would not meet the same fate as the first. Unfortunately, the vault and the second creator were both destroyed in the bombings of World War II. Was this a coincidence that both books and creators were destroyed? Some think that an ancient curse latched onto the book on creation. This then passed to the second on creation. Was it due to the story inside? Little is written on the book. People only ever paid attention to the cover. This may have been by design. The company that created the books then passed on to one of the previous owner's nephews. After his retirement, he decided to do a personal project and recreate the book. This copy lives in the British Library to this day. I would not risk attempting to touch or read it though. Its past seems like a clear warning. In at number 2, we have the Grand Grimoire. The Grand Grimoire is also nicknamed the Gospel of Satan. It is an occult book written by a man in the 15th century. Little is known about the man who wrote the book, but he is believed to have been possessed by the devil. On completion of the book, the devil passed from him into the book. book. The book is known to be cursed by the devil. You're advised to not attempt to read this book. A grimoire is a book of spells. The particular spells in the book are dark and twisted. Often some form of sacrifice is needed to complete any of the spells. You would need to be willing to perform some truly evil acts if you wanted to be successful with these spells. A lot of people look for this book due to its promise to be able to bring loved ones back to life or summon demons. Many people who are grieving loved ones who passed too soon try to use this book to bring them back. This is extremely dangerous, and not only will it may not work, but it might backfire and cause your own demise. This book has such a dark reputation, it has been the most feared book since medieval times. Of course, it goes without saying that you should avoid this book, really any book that promises it can summon demons, as that is usually a big sign that it might be cursed. Catcher in the Rye? What the f***? Everyone's read this book. I'm not possessed. Maybe. And finally, in at number 1, we have The Catcher in the Rye. The Catcher in the Rye is one of the most well-known American books of the 20th century. It is often a required reading for most teens during high school. Despite this, the book has a dark past that often gets overlooked. It was written by J.D. Salinger and first published in 1951. The book is considered to perfectly capture the essence of adolescence. Throughout time and the changes in society is still relatable to teenagers' lives today. It reflects the true nature of being an adolescent, the rebellion, survival, and internal struggles of growing up. Follows the story of a young man named Holden Caulfield. He has been kicked out of a number of schools, and when the story picks up, he has been kicked out of his latest school. He does not want to tell his parents, fearing the punishment that might follow. He runs away from home and starts his adventures in New York. At the time of its release, it was seen as controversial for using bad language and adult themes, but the author didn't want to censor the book. He wanted an accurate depiction. None of this is why the book is considered cursed, though. The curse comes from the link the book has to murders. The list of crimes linked to the book is longer than you might expect, one of the most famous being the assassination of John Lennon. His killer sat and read the book until the police arrived. He then used the book to write and sign his confession. He later explained that after reading the book he wanted to save Lennon and maintain his innocence forever. This is not the only famous murder connected to the book. Robert Bardo took the life of actress Rebecca Schaeffer, and John Hinckley assassinated Ronald Reagan. Both were carrying copies of the book while committing their crimes. It is unknown why this curse turns people into killers or how this book became cursed. It appears that it has the power to turn certain readers into criminals. It seems that it does not have the ability to make everyone behave in the same way. Maybe if you read the book at a low point in your life, you'll be susceptible to the curse. So there is a chance you'll read the book and be fine, but there is a risk that it will intercept your mind with the dark thoughts. It seems to make the reader believe they need to cleanse the world. So if you do have to read this, please just be careful.
Starting off this countdown, we have The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is a cursed book that is said to drive readers into insanity. So this book is composed of a series of short stories written by a man named Robert Chambers. Apparently, the first act is fairly normal, so it entices you to keep reading. But once you get to Act 2, that's where it gets all weird and extremely dark. Here's what one person said about the book. The very banality and innocence of the first act only allowed the blow to fall afterward with more awful effect. Even seeing the first page of the second act is enough to draw the reader in. If I had not caught a glimpse of the opening words in the second act, I should never have finished it. Sounds intense, right? Well, it is. In fact, a number of people have claimed to have felt ill while reading this book. Others said they have woke up with weird bruises and scratches all over their bodies, or even had very vivid and dark night terrors. One individual posted online saying her friend got possessed by this book. She read the book, and every time there's mention of it, she'll go into this huge coughing fit. Not only that, one night she sent a bunch of weird messages to her friends saying stuff like, "Have you seen the yellow sign?" which is a reference to the book. The next day she checked her phone and had no memory whatsoever of sending these texts. After reading this book, her health literally started to decline. Somehow, she thinks she has fallen victim to this book's curse. Moving on to number 4, we have Death Note. Death Note is a fictional Japanese manga series about a notebook that will kill anyone whose name is written inside of it. But obviously this isn't real, right? Well, this actually influenced a bunch of murders. For starters, in 2005 in China, several schools banned replica death notebooks that children were using. They were caught writing names of their peers and teachers in them, basically people they wished were dead. Same thing happened in 2007 in the States. In fact, a student in Virginia was suspended for having a death notebook. Then the murders started. In 2007 in Belgium, a dismembered corpse was found in a forest. Next to the body were 2 notes. both references to the Death Note series. The killer was a mystery for years. That was until 2010 when 3 suspects were convicted for this crime. Apparently, they were all fans of this series. With all that being said, there is a real cursed death notebook out there. Story goes that a man named Rob Thatcher was a huge fan of this show and decided to create one of his own. He wrote down the names of people he wanted gone, but obviously nothing happened. So he took it a step further by performing a satanic ritual. During this ritual, he cut his hand as a sacrifice to Satan and bled on the pages of the notebook. And guess what? It worked. The next day, one of his enemies got in a deadly car accident. It was late at night and he skidded off the road and died. The following week, his ex-girlfriend had a terrible allergic reaction that sent her to the hospital where she nearly died. And then the following week, another one of his victims died by taking his own life. So it's believed that his book is now cursed by the devil, and whoever's name is written in there will die.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Book of Abramelin. The book was formed from 12 manuscripts written by a man named Abraham. He wrote the book to pass on his secrets to his son. He told the story of his journey across the Egyptian desert. During his time in the desert, he came across a magical being. The mage taught a powerful form of Kabbalistic magic to Abraham. In return, the mage asked for Abraham to live in fear of the Lord and to serve him. He said he must not live his life in search of riches or have more than he needs. He warned him not to use the magic to obtain any of these things. When Abraham returned home, he wrote the book to ensure he did not lose the knowledge. He wrote powerful incantations, ways to summon otherworldly beings, as well as other powerful spells. His pride started to get the best of him once the book was complete. He decided to only keep this to himself and pass it down to his family. He began to boast of his newfound power. He bragged that he could raise the dead and become invisible at will. Of course, no one in the town believed him. He decided he would show them all. He used minor spells to prove his power. Once they believed him, others came to see him. They offered him great jewels to bring back their loved ones or bring them good fortune. He fell deeper and deeper into his greed. He had broken his oath to the mage. He began to have bad luck and strange things happening around him. He would see spirits from another world and was being haunted by dark entities. It is believed that as he broke his oath, he became cursed. He suddenly passed away in a horrible accident. Since then, anyone who owned the book was haunted and plagued by the curse. Abraham's family never used the book and tried to keep away from the rest of the world. Coming in at number 2, we have The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is a book of short stories. It was written by writer Robert W. Chambers and first published in 1895. The book was named after a play which has the same name and recurs as a motive throughout some of the stories. The first half of the book contains highly esteemed horror stories. It has been described as a classic in the field of supernatural. There are 10 stories included in the book. The first 4 mention The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is said to be a forbidden play that drives those who read it into despair and madness. Although these short stories only speak of the forbidden play, it is said that if you were to find the original text, you may be driven mad. It was once performed for a mass audience. The cursed play lured the audience or reader in. By the time you get to the second act, the audience or reader have been driven completely insane. This is why the text is thought to have been destroyed and is forbidden to read. If you do think you have found it, then I warn you to not read it, or you might just be driven mad yourself. I'm already mad, so I can read it. And finally, in at number 1, we have The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Young Werther is a novel written by John Wolfgang von Goethe and published in 1774. Goethe was 24 at the time of writing the book, and it took him only 5.5 weeks of intense writing to finish. It instantly placed him among the foremost international literary celebrities and was among the best known of his work. The majority of the plot focuses on a young man's extreme response to unrequited love. The book had a big cultural impact. It was given the name Werther Fever. Young men throughout Europe began to dress in clothing described in the novel. The obsession started to go a little further than this. Young men started to copy the ending of the book where the main character takes his own life. Copies of the book were found with each copycat passing. Authorities all over Europe were concerned and didn't know what to do. They banned the wearing of the clothing from the book, hoping this would stop the copycats from taking inspiration from the text. It was labeled an epidemic, and governments were desperate to stop the young men from passing. This led to a revision of the book in 1787. They gave the book a new ending, a happy ending in hopes of stopping any further pain. In the new ending, a friend learns of his plans to hurt himself and stops him. The young man then learns how to become a part of society and goes on to live his life. The original copy of the book was banned. It is said if you read it, even today, you will be cursed and driven mad to the point of copying the steps of the young Werther. The new version of the book stopped the epidemic pandemic, and more books were given a happy ending to not cause such a disaster again.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a cursed grimoire that is said to contain summoning spells for over 72 demons. That's right, this book can help you summon 72 demons. And no one knows who wrote it. What we do know is that this book contains a bunch of compiled texts from the 17th century. Some of these texts tell the reader how to conjure spirits or demons, and then it tells you how to control these entities that you summon. No matter how cool you may think that is, you don't ever want to own this book. This book is apparently so cursed that anyone who keeps a copy of it will die or experience constant bad luck. One person who owned a copy of this book reported the book's pages turning on its own. Another time, the book violently flew across the room at them. They also heard strange whispers coming from the book, and on a number of occasions have seen shadow people. The only way to end this curse is to burn all the pages in the book and then get rid of all the ashes. Seems like a lot of work, so maybe just don't go out seeking copies of it. Although we don't know who wrote the book, legend has it that King Solomon originally wrote it for his son. He then asked him to bury it with him in his grave. But apparently when he was getting prepared for burial, a group of Babylonian philosophers found the book, and one of them got a vision from an angel. The angel told him to hide the book from the unworthy. So he decided to cast a spell on it to keep it from getting into the wrong hands. And that's how the book got its curse. But for some reason, copies of the book can be found on the internet. So if you want to tempt your fate, check it out. But seriously, actually maybe don't. Like, all we need this year are demons taking over the world because some Dumbo tried to summon them. In our fourth spot today, we have the Grand Grimoire. Otherwise known as the Gospel of Satan, this book has been named one of the most terrifying occult books in history. So it was apparently written in the 16th century by a man that was possessed by the devil. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The book is filled with instructions on how to summon demons or raise spirits from the dead. Reading this book and following any of the spells is said to be equivalent to selling your soul to the devil, which is why the original book is kept locked away somewhere in the Vatican's secret archives. They don't want anyone messing around with this book. But you can find versions of this book online and for sale, but it won't be the original cursed text. Either way, I'm not risking it.
In at number 3, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is another book of spells. It is known as a cursed book of demonology. The author is unknown, as is usually the case with cursed books. Some say it is compiled from various texts gathering information from the most powerful spell books. It was first found in the 17th century. Since then, the book has been published and can even be found on Amazon. But think before you purchase. The book contains passages on how you could conjure the dead, demons, or lost spirits. Once summoned, it also tells how you can use these spirits for your own bidding. Ancient texts are often rumored to be cursed. The same can be said for this one, with tragedy and bad luck following the book. This book, unlike the other spellbooks, includes unique spells that others don't often mention. For example, it includes how to make yourself invisible or locate missing items. There are recipes for love potions and even liquors of persuasion. It seems there is nothing that you cannot achieve if you bought this book. This may be by design, promise those desperate for success or wanting something out of reach that they can have anything they want, all for a price of a book. You should get lots of sales. But this is definitely not a book that you should want to own. It is apparently so cursed that it will doom anyone who has it on their bookshelf. There have been claims of various hauntings surrounding the books. The pages of the book reportedly turn on their own if the book is left idle. Others noted the book flying across the room. There are also more concerning hauntings. People have heard demonic whisperings around their home after buying the book, while also seeing shadow creatures in the corner of their eyes. The good news is there is a way to break the curse if you have already welcomed it into your home. It has been claimed that the way to dispose of the book is to burn it to ashes. Once you dispose of the ashes, you should be free of the curse, unless of course you use one of the spells wrong and something has backfired. In at number 2, we have the Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is known to be one of the most mysterious books in the world. It is unknown who the author was or when it may have been written. It is 240 pages long. It is written cryptically in an indecipherable language. It is also full of strange, elaborate illustrations. The book is one of a kind. It has attracted many great minds over the years, all driven crazy after not being able to crack the code. The book is named after Wilfrid Voynich. He founded a second secondhand store in London. He was traveling in Rome during 1921 looking for books for his store. During his trip, he discovered the manuscript. He gave the manuscript his name due to its mystery. He realized he had stumbled upon something very, very special. The only indication of the book's past was a letter found along with the book. The letter stated it was written in 1665. It spoke about how the manuscript had once belonged to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who reigned from 1576 to 1612, meaning it is at least 450 years old from what we know of. As most of the contents are unknown due to being unreadable, it is unclear exactly what the purpose of the book was. It is, however, believed that the book carries a curse of the old ones. This book may contain secrets of the ancient ones. This would explain why no one understands the language. It is an ancient dialect that no one alive today could comprehend. Some believe that if you did happen to crack the code, the curse would then be released. Even so, many have continued to try. Hopefully no one ever does. If you spoke the words out loud, it might release an evil onto the world we could never stop. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Necronomicon. The Necronomicon book is said to be bound in human flesh and inked in blood. It is a book of nightmares containing the darkest curses. Roughly translated, the title means an image of the law of the dead. It is said to even contain the power to resurrect the dead and summon ancient creatures. It is said that those who have read the book have turned insane or even died upon finishing the book. The story is that the book was written by Abdul al-Hazred and is over 1,000 pages long. Obviously, it is the most haunted, cursed, and doomed book in the world. It has even made appearances in various horror films including Evil Dead and Friday the 13th. Of course, not a lot is known about the particular curses due to those who have read them no longer being around, but what we do know is that the original texts have the power to end humanity. If anyone was to survive the reading or survive performing one of the curses, they may summon one of the old ones. The old ones are the ancient creatures who ran the world before humanity, creatures like Cthulhu, who if awakened would destroy the earth before we could even think about stopping them. People who have been tempted to bring back their past loved ones have turned to the Necronomicon for answers, only to be driven mad the further into the book they read. The book does contain the power to bring back loved ones, but you would have to survive losing your own mind and soul along the way. Most copies of the book were destroyed for obvious reasons, but not all of the contents are lost forever. If you're brave enough to read any of the dark curses inside, there is a copy located in Massachusetts Miskatonic University. Just be careful what you read into, it could be the last thing you ever do. Coming in at 5 Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Penned by Alvin Schwartz, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is a series of 3 collections of short horror stories for children. Yes, I say children, but that does not diminish the horror this book houses, which is the reason it was banned from shelves for the majority of the 90s. Alvin Schwartz drew heavily from folklore and urban legends for his stories which are influenced by the likes of T.S. Eliot, Mark Twain, and even Shakespeare. Now, as previously stated, this series is listed by the American Library Association as being one of the most challenged books of all time, specifically in the 90s. Complaints were made about its violence, disturbing subject matter, unsettling artwork, and potential unsuitability for younger readers, and of course, religious concerns. As a book that was originally aimed towards children, the topics of murder, disfigurement, and even cannibalism were met with rage by parents and readers, with one reader even calling it sick, repulsive, and really disgusting. Among the groups who have attempted to ban the book completely are Parents, Women of America, the American Library Association, and the Bulletin of the Center for Children's Books. In 1993, during an interview with the Chicago Tribune, a former elementary school teacher stated, "If these books were movies, they'd be R-rated because of the graphic violence. There's no moral to them. The bad guys always win." What truly haunted readers and made it a tome passed down from generations to generations was the haunting artwork by Stephen Gammell, which features incredibly unsettling black and white images including grotesque sewer rats, a young woman with spiders crawling out of her cheeks, and of course the eerie shot of a scarecrow with a noose hanging around its neck. The book has since been adapted into a movie which was released on August 9th of this year and was met with praise, mostly due to Guillermo del Toro producing the terrifying film. Coming in at 4, literally everything by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe had a knack for creating some of the most horrifying tales and infusing them with visceral dread. Poe is best known for his poetry and short stories, particularly his tales of mystery and the macabre, and is generally considered the inventor of the detective detective fiction genre and greatly contributed to the genre of science fiction. He was also the first well-known writer to earn a living through writing alone, resulting in a financially difficult life and career before his death on October 3rd, 1849, when he was found delirious and wandering the streets of Baltimore. However, during his years as a writer, his characters and narrators mostly focused on the mentally fragile and the insane, people who are haunted by things that might be literal or even manifestations of their unsound thought processes. Some of his most terrifying works in particular are stories like The Telltale Heart or The Cask of Amontillado, which both retain their powers to petrify readers more than a century after publication. Poe was a writer who managed to tap into the fundamental fear we all have, that the people around us may not be as they seem.
Coming in at number 3, we've got the Book of Abramelin. Heading back in the direction of spellcasting and dark magic, here we have a tome written from the teachings of a mage. Apparently back in the 16th century, a traveling writer named Abraham came across an old wizened mage. This man had seen it all and was privy to some of the world's darkest secrets. The mage told Abraham all he knew, and Abraham took those lessons and wrote them down in a book. Interestingly enough, he dedicated this tome to his son. What's better than a book of forbidden knowledge from the old man, right? This mage taught Abraham many things, from how to raise the dead to how to conjure destructive spells. To achieve many of these effects, one would have to find and control their own personal demon. This act is very dangerous, as if the demon decides to break free, all hell could break loose. Literally. However, for those with the discipline and questionable morals to pull off such a feat, they could achieve things that many only dream of. Invisibility, flying, discovering hidden treasures, the works. At the turn of the 20th century, an English translation of the book was published, leading to all sorts of new rumors of curses and evil magic. So if you do manage to get your hands on a copy, be careful while perusing the contents. Coming in at number 2, the Voynich Manuscript. Mysterious and malevolent, nobody has successfully decoded the contents of this book yet. That lack of understanding may contribute to its terrible power. For now, the safest thing to do would be to leave it alone, but curiosity always kills the cat. The origins are foggy at best, with many thinking that it dates back to the 15th century. However, others claim that aliens brought this book to Earth with the intent of destroying many inquisitive minds. While the book is now surrounded by rumors and claims that it brings misfortune wherever it goes, the decoding of the contents could bring about even more misery. It's said that whoever reads the book and understands it will release a powerful curse unto the world, one that will kill them, their loved ones, and anyone who investigates it further. It could even be a doomsday prophecy, with the successful reading of it leading to worldwide destruction. It's good to be inquisitive and look for new things, but I think this mystery is one best left unsolved. And finally at number 1, we've got the Necronomicon. Literary historians would tell you that this is a made-up book invented by the father of cosmic horror himself, H.P. Lovecraft. He mentions such a tome in many of his bone-chilling stories as a source of great eldritch knowledge and a portal into realms unknown. It's a great plot device and symbol for all that man should not be privy to. However, a lot of people don't believe the story ends there. Some believe that Lovecraft lifted this idea from a real book, one that's existed for ages and brings about chaos wherever it travels. We're no strangers to horrific incantations and demonic chants on this channel, so this should come as no surprise. But leaders of cults and crazies alike would love to get their hands on this book. It's been adapted and recreated for many purposes, showing up in alternate forms in pop culture at large. Often crafted from human flesh and full of images of unimaginable horrors, those who possess it inevitably go mad and summon something horrid into our world. The original Necronomicon is rumored to be under the watchful eye of the church, while others think that scholars of the ancient arts have been studying it for time immemorial. Regardless, don't go in expecting some light summer reading. Those who learn the teachings of the Necronomicon don't often remain sane or even human. I wonder if any of these titles are available as ebooks, maybe on Kindle? It would make it so much easier to read them during my commute. An audiobook would be nice, although that could get very destructive very fast. Imagine that. People rickrolling each other with cursed knowledge, spewing cosmic horrors out of their friends' unwilling laptop speakers. Let's hope that doesn't actually happen.
Coming in at number 5, we have Codex Gigas. The Codex Gigas is also known as the Devil's Bible. It was written in the 16th century by a monk. It has been told that the monk had broken his vow. He was then put on trial for breaking his vow. This is not something that was taken lightly. After a short trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to execution. He had a couple of days left. With the little time that he had left, he wanted to write everything he knew about the human experience. He wanted there to be something left of him after he passed on. He was writing as much as he could for as long as he could. He knew they would come to take him soon. With the little time that he had left, he decided that he would summon the devil. He wanted to make a deal with the devil. He promised him his soul if Lucifer would finish writing the book that he had started. Once he was taken away, the devil did just that. The book was completed by the devil himself. It is said to be overflowing in dark imagery. The book contains rituals that you can perform to contact the devil yourself. It also includes sketches of the devil and other demonic beings. The devil used the book to hold dark, ancient curses. As an evil being, he wanted anyone who came into contact with the book in their life to be cursed. He wanted to take more souls as he did the old monk. It is said the soul of the monk is bound to the book by the devil, as those who touch it may see or hear the monk's warning to save their souls. Coming in number 4, we have the Book of Soiga. The Book of Soiga is also known as the Book of Death. There have only ever been 2 copies known in existence. The book has been written in an unknown language. There has never been anyone who have been able to identify the language. It is also not known who's written the book. There was a lot of mystery around the text. A scholar named John Dee found the book. He wanted to attempt to decode the book. He became obsessed with the book. He started to fall into insanity. John started to no longer resemble himself. His professional work was not the same, and he was consumed by the obsession of the writing. After his death in 1608, the book was lost. It was not discovered again until 1994. Since the book was resurfaced, many have tried to decode the book. Anyone attempting to decode the book have had to deal with some serious consequences. According to the legend, anyone who does successfully decode the book will pass away within the next 3 years. It's rumored this may have been what happened to John Dee. Decoding the book might have driven him crazy and the curse took his life. He might have hidden the book so that for all those years it would not hurt anyone else or drive anyone insane. Both copies have now been found. They have been secured and can be found in London. One is kept at the British Library and the other is at the Bodleian Library. They are locked away safe so that no one can attempt to read the horrors contained within the text.
Number 3 on this list is the Book of Shadows. The name alone, the Book of Shadows, is enough to make someone believe that this text is haunted, but its origins confirm that suspicion even more. Gerald Gardner was a Wiccan living in the 1940s. Now, if you aren't familiar with what a Wiccan is, then it's actually someone who practices the religion of Wicca, which is a modern pagan religion. Gerald Gardner created the Book of Shadows, or was at least the person who brought it to people's attention. He's also known as the father of Wicca and is considered by most to be the one who started this religion. He may not have actually been the one to have written the book though, because he says that he received this ancient text from a secret coven of witches. Owen Davies, an expert on haunted books, says that this book was one of the last of a line of worshippers of an ancient fertility religion, which he and his followers believed had survived centuries of persecution by Christian authorities. This obviously made this text extremely valuable to Gerald, and he used it as a means to gain more of a following for his religion. Inside this book are magical rituals, spells, enchantments, and a variety of instructions for how to perform other sacred summonings. This book is said to be extremely dark in nature and certainly something that you would want to pray before reading. Gerald apparently used many of these spells and rituals through his life as he praised witchcraft. Others who have read this book have reported feeling extremely cold and getting the sensation of being watched. Any book that you apparently receive from a coven of witches has spells on how to worship them, and it's called the Book of Shadows. It certainly can't be any good. Number 2 on this list is the Great Omar. The Great Omar is one of the prettiest and ornate books that you will ever see in your life. Back in the day, book binding, the process of assembling a book and putting it together, was considered by most to be an art form. This book really proves that, having taken 2,500 hours to create and using emeralds, rubies, and sapphires in its creation, it really was a marvel. The text in this book contained a bunch of 4-line poems by Omar Khayyam. These poems were apparently filled with temptation and condemned by the church because of that. That being said though, after the book was constructed, Sangorsky, the man who designed the book, wanted to sell it at an exorbitant price. Problem was, not many people wanted a book that would cost them thousands of pounds. This book traveled by ship back and forth from Europe and America several times with no apparent buyer in sight. This continued until it's made its way onto a very famous ship called the Titanic. Obviously, the Titanic did not reach its destination, and the Great Omar sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, where it rests to this day. However, what gives this book the designation of being haunted is that only a week or 2 later, Sangorsky himself died. He died from drowning, just like the people on the Titanic would have died. Ever since this has happened, people believe that the Great Omar was actually cursed, and that it could have potentially been the cause of the Titanic's demise and the death of Sangorsky. It could all be one big coincidence, but I don't recommend reading the Great Omar 2, which was published by Sangorsky's partner later in life. life, because some evil may just befall you. Number 1 on this list is the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a book that came after one of the oldest grimoires to ever exist, which is the Key of Solomon. Now, the Key of Solomon was estimated to have been written in the 15th century, whereas the book that we're looking at right now, the Lesser Key of Solomon, was said to have been written 2 centuries later. The first book talks a lot about the power of God and utilizing that power for personal gain. Typically, this was done through extensive worship of God and various ceremonies that praised his power. The Lesser Key of Solomon, though, takes a far different approach. This book expanded on those principles but mainly dove into demonology. Its pages studied the hierarchy of demons and the beliefs surrounding demons. As many of you are probably expecting, though, it didn't just stop there at an intellectual study. The Lesser Key of Solomon went far deeper and described the process in summoning demons and traveling to the demon world. Its pages show a much greater appreciation to Satan and discuss the great power that can be obtained from worshipping demons and the devil. It goes into detail on how to craft potions that you can give to other people that will then put them under your spell. This book is also said to be heavily cursed. It is reported that if you own this book, you are susceptible to demonic possession. Previous owners have reported strange ongoings such as pages turning on their own, other books flying off of the shelf, and dark creatures appearing in their home. Therefore, owning this book is said to be extremely risky, and even though you might get a glimpse into how to navigate the underworld, you could become a victim to one of those very demons that you're trying to summon.
In at number 5, we have the Orphan story. The Orphan story was published in 2018. However, the writing of this novel was started 400 years earlier by Martin de Leon Cardenas. Martin was not just any writer, he was a monk who broke his sacred vow. He wrote the majority of the novel between 1608 and 1615. There is a rumor of a curse surrounding the novel. The reason the book was not published until 2018 was due to everyone involved in the book mysteriously dying. The curse is rumored to have been attached to the book when the monk broke his sacred vow. He was the first to die before he could finish writing the story. It was Belinda Palacios who rediscovered the manuscript hidden in the archives of the Hispanic Society of America in 1965. She was determined to finish the book and have it published, but was deterred by her colleagues warning her about the curse. The book then went back into the archives. Others attempted to publish the book on several occasions. The publication fell through each time because those involved kept dying suddenly under mysterious circumstances. The deaths were caused by sudden traumatic events, horrific car accidents, sudden and unexplained illnesses. It finally took 400 years for someone to be brave enough to publish the book. Even now, after being published, it is believed the curse is still contained within the story. The difference being now it has been duplicated and sent all over the world, making the curse stronger and having many more victims than it can claim. The origin of the curse contained in the book is unknown, however it is thought to be millions of years old. Formed over the worship of ancient religions, when the monk broke his vow, he unknowingly released the curse. It then latched onto the pages of the manuscript, taking anyone who dared to be involved with it. In at number 4, we have Untitled Book of Spells. This untitled spellbook was first known by the public in 2013. 2 books were listed for sale online. The online seller was selling 2 mysterious handwritten and spiral-bound spellbooks. The books were sold for a crazy $13,865. Once sold, the seller sent a warning to the buyers saying, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." The warning means that if you do not study witchcraft and you attempt to study or perform anything within the book, you will be cursed and will suffer. These spells were believed to have been written by a high priestess of Wiccan named Persephone Adrasta Irene sometime in the early 1960s. It is believed that she ran her own coven, keeping to herself in an area that others avoided. It is believed that spellbooks should always be burned after the witch who wrote them dies. The spells should not be used by anyone if not under the witch's supervision. The 2 books are believed to be reworkings of the original work by someone in the coven. They did not want the work to be lost, so they reworked and created 2 copies of the spells. This is not something that should ever be done. They each contain vast collections of incantations, curses, spells, and enchantments. There are instructions on how to summon spirits, demons, and other worldly entities, as well as instructions on exorcism in case something goes wrong during another spell. It is not currently known where the book is or if the buyer is alive or dead. Hopefully they are worthy to study the pieces, otherwise they may have cursed themselves.
Coming in number 3, we've got the Orphan story. So make sure you're looking very carefully at the books you're picking up. There are quite a few hardcovers and paperbacks adorned with titles similar to The Orphan Story. It could be Orphan Story, or The Orphan Story, or even just Orphan's Story. Hell, I do believe that there are books written this century called, word for word, The Orphan Story, but not the same as the tale we're about to tell. What a world, right? It's almost like orphans are classic literary tropes that get people engaged in stories quickly. Who doesn't love a good found family tale? But I'm getting off track. This tale was originally penned in the 1600s by Martin de Leon Cardenas. There's nothing particularly scary about the story itself. It's about a young Spaniard who heads to America in search of fortune. But for some reason, everyone who became involved in the publication of this book met with a grisly fate. Editors and translators who had previously worked on it died in terrible car crashes or succumbed to deadly illnesses. It seemed to go all the way back to the original story too. Hundreds of years of people attempting to get a book published only to be killed in upsetting ways. It's a wonder it got published at all. In 2018, the book was finally published, so you can head out and read it now. Although with a legacy like that, do you really want to flip through those pages? Coming in at number 2, we've got the Codex Gigas. The Devil's Bible. Who knew this was even a thing? What I like about this entry is the fact that I can make this joke now. That's right, you should be praying before you crack open a Bible because that's what people tend to do already. Heyo. Can't take full credit for that joke though because Lindsay made it to me first, so laugh away. Now, back to the actual demonic properties of this book. The Codex Gigas is an extremely large medieval illuminated manuscript containing a number of alphabets, the entire Latin Bible, the history of the Jews, medical works, the New Testament, necrology, magic formula, and more. It's known as the Devil's Bible because of the unusual illustration of a devil inside. Most Bibles tend to avoid full-page drawings of Satan. This relates back to a legend concerning this tome where a monk was accused of breaking a vow to his master. As punishment, he was to be walled up and left there. Before he could be sealed away, however, the monk desperately promised to make a book that would glorify the monastery forever. It would include all of human knowledge, a lofty goal indeed. So he set to making this beautiful book filled with intricate calligraphy, illustrations, and embellishments. As the clock was about to run out, he realized he was still 10 pages short. In order to get it done on time and save his life, he made a deal with the fallen angel Lucifer, his soul in exchange for the completed book. Lucifer took this deal, completed the book, and had the monk put an illustration of him inside as thanks. Nowadays, under plenty of scrutiny, scholars have estimated that a book this complex would have taken something like 20 years to make, and that's without all the illustrations. Just the calligraphy. Holy smokes. And finally, at number 1, we've got the Book of Sagya. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. I know it sounds like something along the lines of Ligma, but I promise you don't want to post about this. If you begin writing about it or learning its secrets, you might be driven mad. That's exactly what happened to a scholar by the name of John Dee. He came into possession of this 16th century Latin essay on demonology and became obsessed. Down the rabbit hole he went, struggling to figure out what secrets the book might hold. He discovered that it was full of dark rituals and potentially dangerous incantations, but beyond that he couldn't really make heads or tails of it. Eventually he lost his mind. He began reaching out to people to act as mediums through which he could communicate with angels. In doing so, he apparently discovered that the book was unreadable to anyone other than the Archangel Michael. Bummer. After Dee's death, many others have attempted to make sense of this ancient tome, but to no avail. So maybe stick to fantasy novels, yeah, or some lovely non-fiction depending on your interests. A good book is hard to beat, but I can't see any of these tomes being referred to as good. Unfortunate, but fair.
In at number 5, we have Tamino's Hell. Okay, so this one is a poem rather than a full book, but it still holds an ancient curse that it is worth sending a warning about. It was written by Japanese writer Seijo Yaso. Not much is known about the writer. He published the poem in 1919 in his 27th collection of poetry. Seijo lost his sister and his father during World War I. It is said since that happened, he was in a constant state of suffering and grief. Since the poem gained its reputation for the curse, many have given their opinion how the book became such a danger. Many believe that Seijo was vulnerable to demons while he was in his suffering state, that he might have been persuaded to do their bidding to ease his pain. He allowed them to curse the poem in such a way that when it was read out loud, it would cause those who heard it to suffer. It is unknown if Seijo was aware of the consequences of his actions when he published the work. The work itself seems to almost confirm this, as it follows a young boy who has suffered loss in his descent into hell. When the poem was released release, there quickly came reports of sudden passings. One woman is said to have died moments after reading the poem out loud. Others have complained of chest pains, sharp pains in their brain, along with many other severe symptoms. Many people got sick and others passed away suddenly from illness or bizarre accidents. The one passing that was most famous was that of Japanese filmmaker Terayama Shuji. Shuji made a film based on the poem in 1974. The film was believed to have been cursed by the poem when Shuji passed away suddenly shortly after it was released. The book has since become a terrifying legend, and those who know of it try to avoid it at all costs. In 2004, the writer Inu Haiko published a book based on the poem. This brought the poem to a new audience. Since then, more people have found the poem online to test if the rumors are true. Those people reported weird occurrences and horrific accidents after they read it. In at number 4, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage is a book of mystic arts written by Abraham for his son Lamech. It was a 3-part 15th century book. It was translated in the 1900s. Once translated, it developed a reputation for being cursed. Abraham wrote his book based on the idea that every person has their own unique personal demon. The book contains rituals to help the reader summon and control their demon. It is told that once you could do this, you could perform supernatural feats. It is said that if you own this book, you will also get the attached curse. Anyone with a copy in their possession will be haunted by spirits from another realm. People unlucky enough to own the book have had bad luck follow them, and some even met an early demise. It is said that the incantations that give you the ability to control your demon releases the curse and opens you up to demons from the other side. Fun stuff. Coming at 3, we need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. Published in 2003, this book is perhaps one of the most haunting books I have ever read, and has continued to linger with me for years, which is exactly why it has a place on our list. We need to talk about Kevin follows a fictional school massacre, a subject matter that has been incredibly prevalent in our society over the last few years, which is absolutely disgusting, through the eyes of the shooter's mother, Eva, and documents her attempt to come to terms with her son Kevin and the murders he committed. Now, what makes this book truly terrifying is that it focuses on the terror of children, the few of us that have maintained their innocence. However, the terror only increases when we come to terms with the fact that the human beings we create become their own people, and sometimes those people become strangers that may go on to commit unlawful acts. Obviously, the idea that our children may grow up one day to be criminals is absolutely terrifying, but what if there's a chance that their psychopathic ways may have been influenced by their development, and that in turn, specifically in the book, Eva's ambivalence towards maternity may have just been the trigger that causes Kevin to become the monster we read about. In 2005, BBC Films acquired the rights to adapt the book as a film, which was helmed by director Lynn Ramsey. In 2011, it was released and starred Tilda Swinton and Ezra Miller, and was, as expected, met with praise from film critics and cinemagoers. Coming in at 2, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. This book is a 3-part 15th century book of mystic arts written by Abraham for his son Lamech. It is unknown when it was first written, but it was translated to English in the year 1900, and quickly developed a reputation for being cursed, of course. Now, the story itself follows an Egyptian mage named Abraham, who taught a system of magic to Abraham of Worms, a Jew in Worms, Germany, presumed to have lived from 1362 to 1458. The story involves Abraham passing his magical and Kabbalistic secrets on his son, and tells how he acquired his knowledge. Abraham believed that every person had their own unique personal demons, and through the book we learn rituals that could bring our personal demons under control, and even supernatural feats using sigils and magic, words on a grid. Now, the book's downside, like I previously stated, is that it's believed anyone who possesses a copy will be haunted by spirits from another realm, and in turn will experience terrible luck that will ultimately bring about their demise. Finally, coming in at number 1, the Orphan story. Written sometime between 1608 and 1615 by Martin de Leon Cardenas, a monk who broke his sacred vow, the Orphan story is a novel about a 14-year-old Spaniard who leaves Granada and heads to the Americas to seek his fortune. The boy ricochets around the Spanish Empire, from the high society fiestas of Lima to the mephitic mines of Potosi, and even goes on to witness Sir Francis Drake's attack on Puerto Rico. So why exactly is this book on our list? It doesn't sound that horrifying. Well, this book wasn't actually published until 2018, and that's because every time publishers tried to release it, the people involved kept dying under mysterious circumstances. A Peruvian academic named Belinda Palacios rediscovered the manuscript hidden in the archives of Hispanic Society of America in 1965. However, when she began working on the book, colleagues quickly warned her of the curse that was said to linger within the pages. And in turn, she was deterred by the unusual deaths that surrounded the manuscript. Most of the deaths were caused by car accidents and sudden unexplainable illnesses, which of course informed the rumor that the book was cursed, and why it took 400 years for a brave soul to see the project through to completion.